welcome to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business. Today we're going to be talking about ghostwriting with Karen Roe, and she's also the author of the book Behind the Cover. And so we also talk about on this program about the importance of writing a book and how that can help differentiate you in your business. And if you don't have time, well, then you need to hire Karen here. So Karen, welcome to the program today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first off, just tell us a little bit more about what it means to be a ghostwriter.
Right. So a lot of people don't realize, Jamie, that 40% of the books on the market today are ghostwritten. And what that means is that someone else is writing the book and putting their name on it. So a lot of people find that maybe that's a little bit dishonest, but what I've done is I've taken it into more what I like to call collaborative authorship. Okay. So that would be if you wanted to write a book, that I would have interviews and conversations with you and then basically make your content sound really good on the page.
Isn't that difficult though with some of these topics? I mean, if I was like a medical professional that specialized in, heart surgery and I'm throwing all these medical terms out to you, I mean, isn't that, how do you just pull all that stuff together and speak as if you were them, which is what the audience is expecting?
Yeah, well, basically what I see my role is to take the place of the reader who's not going to be there to give any feedback. So if I'm confused or I don't understand something with, any medical terminology, I really see it as my role to make it understandable to whoever they want their target reader to be. And the other thing I would say about that is that everyone understands a story, right? So I would always pull it back, especially like say with a medical book, is pulling it back to human interest stories of how can this, medication or this type of philosophy make a difference for the average person.
Now, when somebody hires a ghostwriter, your name doesn't go on the book, right? Does your name appear anywhere in the book at all?
Well, sometimes on the copyright page, I'll get a credit in terms of editorial project manager.
But the author is whoever hired you to write the book, and then you write that on their behalf.
Right, and that's why it's called ghostwriting, because I don't exist, right?
Now, why the field of ghostwriting? If you can write, why are you not writing your own books?
I do. I have 5 of my own books, but I really enjoy it, and my passion is really to help capture your genius on the page. So a lot of people find writing a book very challenging, and for me it's something that I really enjoy and excel at, so I want to help people get their message out in a way that's going to make a difference for the readers.
Now, who do you specialize in writing books for?
I specialize for the most part in speakers, trainers, entrepreneurs, business owners. So I'm an expert in nonfiction, what I call expert positioning books. So that would be the how-to, the self-help. And then I have about 10% of my audience that has had a really interesting story, and so I'm writing memoirs, right? So that would be a gold medal Olympian or an FBI agent or a reality TV star, so the celebrity types that just, I want to read their book.
Wow, so you've definitely had a lot of experience here. It sounds like you've written some impressive books for people. What's, I don't know if you can say, who you've written for, but can you share some stories of some interesting books that you've been a part of in writing?
Absolutely. Really it's shifted quite a bit now that I've been doing it for 8 years. One of the most interesting stories that I've had recently is through a chiropractor who's been able to reverse many chronic illnesses, up to 82 chronic illnesses, including cancer, Alzheimer's, even stuff like sleep apnea, by treating it nutritionally. So we're starting to see a lot of this holistic information come out, and I just think that's so neat that, one of the things he said to me was, we've actually had a cure for cancer since the 1930s, and here's the truth, there's no money in it. He's like, I reversed cancer in a patient for $2,200. So what's really been interesting to me right now is things like that, where there's new information coming out on the market now that can really make a difference to help people.
Years ago I studied chiropractic just because I like to learn about different topics. And if people study chiropractic, they learn that was founded in that holistic sense of treatment. Today's chiropractor is more, it's like a therapeutic method of treatment for back pain. Mm-hmm. But true chiropractic revolves around the science that the spinal nerve is in the pressures by the spine that's put on them is the cause of so many different diseases, and by repositioning the spine, you can treat many diseases. And so it sounds like you wrote a book for somebody who practices the true meaning of what chiropractic is and everything, and a lot of nutrition comes into play, applied kinesiology. It's an interesting field, and I myself love to visit the chiropractor though, so you can learn a lot though by studying the founding of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's obviously busy running his practice. So writing a book, although important, it's not a revenue generating activity. So clients either have to take time away from their businesses or time away from their personal life on evenings and weekends if they're family, oriented. It's just hard to be able to find the time. So that's really where I see myself being of service, is to help them get their content out.
So what's the process and time frame for a typical business owner to work with you and get a book out, given that they cooperate and make all the meetings?
It really depends. I mean, we can do it as quickly as 3 months from concept to publish. That is very aggressive, and obviously you have to be positioned in such a way that you're able to meet all the deadlines as a client. We also do 4-month and 6-month timelines. That, obviously we have a whole team of people that are supporting the client to get that book completed. And I kick it off with a weekend that I've called Book at the Beach. So that is where the client comes to the beach with me, and we are in a hotel room for 3 days. We get that first draft done in 3 days, right? So that I get everything I need from them in that time, so that they're free to go back to their lives and their businesses, and we can then take over the project.
You actually write the book over that weekend?
We do.
Wow, that seems like an impossible feat to me.
Well, I would say there's a couple of things that work about that. One, I have a blueprint and a structure that I follow. So I have very specific things that I'm looking for, specific questions that I'm asking. And the other thing is, I think people underestimate sometimes what's possible if you put 2 people in a room with one goal for 3 days, what can get accomplished. I mean, we can definitely get a first draft done. I think you could get all kinds of products done and all kinds of things.
So you have a lot of skills or experience in interviewing people. Sounds like you should be a podcast host too. You know how to ask questions, right? I can imagine having to ask 3 days worth of questions for somebody. Is it a challenge to really dig into some of these people, or does it just come out of them naturally?
I've been very fortunate because most of my clients are very passionate about their subject matter, and the biggest problem they have is they're just not, the passion they have just isn't translating onto the page. So I really get to see myself as a vehicle to take that passion and put it onto paper. So usually I get very swept up in, it's contagious, get very swept up in their passion for their subject matter. So
now, do you write the book yourself? Do you have an editor that comes in after you? I mean, what's your team like, or is there a team?
Yeah, no, we have a whole team. So my genius that I'm really good at is that initial, getting something to start with. And then I have a whole team of editors. Obviously, I'm wanting to marry the right editor with the right book project so that their skill sets are uniquely positioned. You mentioned medical books earlier, that we would have someone that is a specialist in, technical writing or medical writing. We have a graphic design team. We have formatters that do the interior layout. I have a project manager. So it takes a village.
Years ago, I started writing a book, and I sent it over to an editor, and they sent it back to me, and it was completely changed.
Yes.
Because I have a very, a unique and complex way of writing, and I like, to put together complex sentences and phrases. And they sent it back to me. It was written for a 6th grader at that point.
Right.
It's destroyed my whole mentality. It's I don't want it to be that simple, but I guess that's what you need to take it to the marketplace then.
Well, you want to be really clear about who your reader is, and then write to that reader. So if your reader was, you were like, oh, I want to appeal to a mass market, then yes, you would write to a grade 6 level. But if you were wanting to appeal to, I want to find people like me that are really passionate about this and want to have a more in-depth solution, then you could definitely increase the grade level in terms of language.
Now, after the book is completed, the publishing stage, I hear a lot about self-publishing, and then there's these book companies out there. Do book companies pick these up? Do you just have to self-publish? How does that come together?
Well, I promote self-publishing, and the reason I do that is because the publishing houses aren't offering the same kind of opportunities for authors that they used to 20 years ago or even 5 years ago. So the great thing that Amazon has done is it's equalized all of the authors so that they no longer need the publishing houses. So they've really switched the power of the publishing houses into the hands of the author. So now you can publishing houses used to offer worldwide distribution. Well, that's now available at your fingertips via Amazon. So I promote self-publishing and tell my authors to spend the money that they would have spent trying to pursue a publishing house into their marketing. Like create a strong end game. How are you going to get the book to work for you? And how are you going to get a return on your investment?
Is it important to still have a physical copy of the book versus the ebook? Or is an ebook good enough to call yourself an author and help you grow your business?
I would say it depends on the industry, but for the most part, yes, I think it is definitely worth it to have a print book. I don't think anyone throws away books, right? So I have clients use it as a big business card. And I just like to think of your book as an ambassador, so it can represent you when you're not there and when you're doing something else.
Right, and just a simple paperback book, no need to go all out and get a hardcover book, correct?
Right, I don't recommend hardcover unless you're writing a children's book or a cookbook. Otherwise, it's really twice the cost, and the value is the same perceived value for a paperback as a hardcover, so save your dollars and get a paperback.
Currently talking to Karen Roe. She is a ghostwriter and owner of Front Row Seat and also author of the book Behind the Cover. And we'll go into that book a little bit more when we come back from the break. Learn more at KarenRoe.com. Again, KarenRoe.com. You're listening to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Loney, where business becomes show business. And we're back to That Business Show 2.0, where business becomes show business. My guest today is Karen Roe. She is a ghostwriter, and learn more at KarenRoe.com, and also author of the book Behind the Cover, which helps you learn how to write your own book. And so, Karen, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, this is my 5th book, but it's the first book that I've had specifically related to my business. So I think I get the same questions frequently over and over again, so I just decided to put it all in a book. This is my best information, and everything I know is in this book in terms of how do I get a book written in 3 days and how do I get a book to market in 3 months.
This book takes you out of the equation, though. It takes a paycheck out of your pocket, though, right? So all your knowledge, or at least the technical side of it, is all inside of there, right?
Right, and I'm sure that you know this, that sometimes knowledge makes no difference, right? So
that is true.
Really, so you can have all the information. That doesn't mean you're going to take my advice and actually implement. So what I would love is for people to read the book and then contact me and say, listen, I have all the information. Will you help me get the book published?
Finishing a book is a challenge for me. I know I've got a couple half-written ones. I get gung-ho, and then it fizzles out and everything.
Yeah.
And so by hiring you, you definitely keep the feet to the fire and get that product done. But for somebody who's going to pick up this book, again, this book is written for somebody who's going to take the initiative. They're going to write their own book. It takes them from the beginning of the process all the way through the publishing process. So let's go through some of just the steps inside the book. The first decision is just to commit, I guess, and decide that you're going to do that. What do you take it from there?
Well, I think the most important thing to do before you start writing is to get really clear about who you are writing to. So I talked in an earlier segment about your ideal reader. So I have an exercise in the book about your ideal reader profile. So you want to take the time to figure out what is that person going to come to my book with a problem that they're wanting to solve. How am I going to solve that problem, right? So the first thing you need to do is figure out who you're writing to, because then your language will be geared towards that one person. So,
the avatar that we hear so much about.
Avatar.
Same thing in business or like in my show. Who am I speaking to? And it's no difference inside of the book. Now, what about like technical skills? Are you giving a lot of literary and technical skills inside of the book?
Well, what I did for the first time ever is I shared my book blueprint. So I mentioned in an earlier segment that I can get a book written in 3 days. It's by using my expert positioning book blueprint. So every chapter serves a purpose, and there are questions that you want to ask yourself in order to fulfill on the purpose of that chapter. So that's outlined in there. I also believe in starting with an outline. So an outline is in there, and it's a timed activity. It'll take you 18 minutes. And that's how you get started. Do the outline, figure out who you're writing to, and then follow the blueprint.
And yeah, the chapters serve as the main headings of the outline, and then you break down each chapter.
Right.
If you do that, it makes writing a book seem much, much less complicated. And I know myself, I've done that a few times, although I've never actually gotten to the finished product. But if you outline it, that's an excellent tip. It makes it go so much smoother.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest mistake that some of the first-time authors make is that they don't have a clear deadline. And if they do, they haven't told anyone else about the deadline. So the biggest favor you can do for yourself is give yourself an external, non-negotiable deadline. So that might be, you're going to have an event with 600 people there that, where you're launching the book, or you've got sponsors that have put dollars down to sponsor your book launch. Things like that, where there's no wiggle room, it gives you the biggest chance at succeeding and finishing and publishing your book.
When you're writing a book, I myself as a reader, I like short chapters.
Yep.
And if I see a long chapter, it actually stops my reading. I'm just trained that way. So when I'm writing a book, should I think in that terms of, should I write short chapters with like a lot of spaces and paragraphs that are different points, or should I focus on longer chapters, or does that matter?
What I would say is focus on what you have to say on your message and the quality of your content, and let the editors and the professionals worry about the length of the chapter, right? There are definitely things you can do, such as graphs and bullets and numbering and illustrations and charts and pull quotes and case studies that can break up the text and make it a lot easier.
Is that a good idea for an entrepreneurial-minded book, to have some illustrations, to have some graphs, to have some stuff inside the book other than just text?
Absolutely. You want to make it easier for people to consume your content. And with our attention spans getting ever, decreasing, that we definitely want to make it easy for them.
Now, today I hear a lot of book people, or people when they write a book, they talk about they're an Amazon bestseller.
Yes.
Can you explain this to me? Because it seems like everybody out there is a bestseller.
Right. So Amazon is the easiest of all of the distribution channels to become a bestseller in. And that is because they report to the points of sale every hour. So if you look at New York Times, which is the Mac Daddy of the bestseller lists, they report from all points of sale across the country for an entire week. Right? So if you look at, okay, you're an Amazon bestseller, that means that you sold the most books in your category for an hour. Now, sometimes it's a day, but you can claim yourself as a bestseller if you climb the ranks in an hour.
And that's just on Amazon, or does it pick up other points of sale too?
Well, that's if you're an Amazon bestseller, and it may pick up other points of sale depending on how many books you sell. I mean, you can definitely in Barnes and Noble and things like that, but for the most part, Amazon is where you start to get the word out and get your name out.
But the main bestseller is New York Times bestseller.
That's right.
So
yeah.
if Amazon, I mean, it's still an accomplishment. I don't want to tear anybody's accomplishment down. But again, it's by the hour across just a small segment of the population.
And in a category, right?
So
if you're in a business or self-help, then that means that you sold the most books in that category for that hour.
How should one promote their new book when it first comes out? I hear a lot about book launches. Are book launches an effective way to get the message out? How would you recommend people then begin to develop their book after it's been written?
Well, what I would say on that is it really depends on two things. One, what your end game is, and two, what your budget is, right? Because as I'm sure you know with marketing, you can spend infinite amounts of money and not necessarily get a return on that. If you are on a budget, what I would recommend is doing some relationship marketing. So that would be promoting the book well in advance and asking, say, 50 people, hey, on September 15th, Jamie, my book is launching. Would you be willing to share about it on your social media? Right? And then you have that conversation 50 times. You want to be a low maintenance date, make it easy for them to say yes, and provide social media copy, provide samples of the book for them to read so that they can promote it. There's a lot you can do. What my biggest tip is to give yourself more time than you think is necessary. So make at least 3 months, but more likely 6 months to market your book.
What is the cost to print your book right there? And can somebody print out 10 copies at a time? Do you have to have 100 copies to get a printer to print that off? Talking about in terms of cost of printing.
Well, this is print on demand, so that is exactly how it sounds, that unless someone orders a copy, they don't print it. So although that's more expensive, what it means for you as an author is you don't have to print 1,000 copies and keep them in your garage or warehouse. So Amazon and Ingram Spark actually take care of the distribution, which is what makes it so user-friendly. You upload the files to them. If someone orders a book on Amazon, Amazon takes care of sending it to them. So it's costing, and then they send you the royalty payment, right? So say this book costs me around $3 or $4. It retails for $19.99. And then they take their share, and then I get, say, $5. But I didn't have to pay any staff members to, just mail the books out or manage payments or anything like that.
Is it difficult to get books inside of the bookstores, the Barnes and Nobles, and those the storefronts? How does someone go about that?
Well, you can become available on self-publishing, but that all depends on how strong your platform is and how many people want the book. In general, if you're wanting to get on storefronts, you would want to deal with a publisher who has connections inside of the industry.
I've heard of a literary agent. How does a literary agent work for you?
A literary agent is similar to, say, a PR person. If you think about the media, where they have the connections with the TV stations and the journalists, and they can get you on air. The literary agent does that for books. They have the connections with the publishing houses, and they can set up a meeting. And they also know specifically what the purview of the publishing houses are, what kind of books they're looking for, so they can match you with the right type of publishing company in order for them to potentially take you on.
Has anybody ever come to you with the idea of for a fictional piece? They want to write a story, not necessarily business, but have you ever helped with just somebody developing a story?
I have, although my area of expertise is really in nonfiction.
But is that an industry where people will use ghostwriters to help them just write a story that they have? Nonfiction, that is fiction, not nonfiction?
It could be. It absolutely could be. And I have, some colleagues that do what I do in the fiction space. I think ghostwriters are much more common in nonfiction. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's harder, I think, to be a ghostwriter in fiction because it's really in the imagination of the author. So that's not something you can necessarily recreate as a ghostwriter.
I've always wanted to write a couple of stories myself. That's why I ask. I just don't know if I ever get them out onto paper and whatnot and everything. So, availability of your book. Where can people find this?
You can find it everywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Ebook store, and internationally it's available.
And what have you seen books do for just some of your clients?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's really great to establish your expertise and credibility. A lot of them I've seen turn into professional speaking careers. So they've transitioned out of working in their business to now going and speaking and internationally. I've had clients go to, to Asia, to Bahamas, to some of the larger markets and get substantial paid speaking gigs. A lot of my clients, though, they now have people coming to them asking them to speak and speak on TV because of their book.
And it's really not a measure of how many books it sold necessarily.
Right.
It's the fact that they have the book out there in print.
Yeah, it's instant credibility. You're immediately considered an expert in your field once you have a book.
Well, good discussion. Karen Roe, ghostwriter and owner of Front Row Seat, and also author of the book Behind the Cover. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Absolutely. Learn more at KarenRoe.com. New episodes of our program each morning at 9 a.m. on ThatBusinessNetwork.com. If you'd like to come onto the program, please visit tbsinterview.com for more information. Also connect with us on social media, facebook.com/thatbusinessshow. And also we're made available on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. You've been listening to That Business Show 2.0 with your host, Jamie Maloney, where business becomes show business.